It's finally here! Star Wars The Force Awakens. I honestly have never been more excited about anything than I was about The Force Awakens. The hype just built up more and more as it got closer to the film's release, and when the early reviews all came out and said that it was everything we ever wanted, I was even more excited. I saw the film at 10 in the morning and sat down with dozens of other Star Wars fans, and as soon as the theme started and the logo zoomed out, I started to tear up, because I was watching the film that I've waited to see since I was 8 years old, the film I never expected to be made. And when the film ended, I sat there with a huge smile on my face, because this film was everything I ever wanted it to be and more. Now, I know pretty much everyone in the entire universe has now seen it, but I don't really want to spoil the film just in case, so I'm going to talk very briefly about the plot and only say what we already knew from the trailers. But seriously, if you haven't watched the film yet, stop the review and go to the next screening of it. The film is set 30 years after the Return of the Jedi. The First Order is starting to rise up, the First Order being the successor to the Empire. The First Order is being led by Captain Phasma and of course the main villain of the film, Kylo Ren. We see Finn, a stormtrooper who decided what he was being forced to do was wrong and so escaped from the First Order. Finn ends up on the planet Jakku and meets Rey and the droid BB-8. The three then go on an adventure together, during which they meet Han Solo and Chewbacca. And you can probably guess the rest of the film, they go up against the First Order. We might as well start off by talking about one of, if not my favourite thing about this film. This movie perfectly recaptures the feeling of the original trilogy while at the same time remaining fresh. It keeps the simplicity of those films and focuses more on the characters and the action than it does the story. And the characters and action are both fantastic. The new characters are all incredibly likeable, full of charm and really interesting too. I found myself intrigued by all the new characters and was left incredibly excited to find out more about them. The performances are all amazing. They really remind you how lifeless the performances in the prequels actually were. Everyone does a great job, especially John Boyega as Finn and Daisy Ridley as Rey. Not only are their performances great, their characters as a whole are fantastic too. In fact, before Han Solo and Chewbacca came in, I was starting to hope they didn't come in until late into the movie because I was enjoying these new characters so damn much. I worried that the old characters would feel really forced in this movie, but luckily they all fit in well. Han and Leia both have grown as characters and it's interesting to see how they developed in the 30-year gap between movies. The two have some great scenes, especially when they're together. They could have easily given us more of the same between them, which they kind of do, but the scenes where they are together are also actually quite emotional. Speaking of emotional, this movie does a really good job of pulling at your heartstrings. There are a couple of scenes where everyone in the cinema were brought to tears, because it gets quite sad, especially towards the end. Not only that, as a Star Wars fan, there are many moments where you are going to sit there and think, this is awesome, especially when they have callbacks to the original trilogy. I'm also really glad that they didn't force in loads of callbacks and that the ones they had actually worked. It wasn't something like American Reunion, which relied way too heavily on nostalgia and didn't work as its own movie. This film works as its own film as well as an homage to the original movies. There are a few moments that I think are a bit too similar to the original trilogy though, especially in the third act. In fact, pretty much the whole story is very similar to A New Hope, but I could look past it because of how much fun I was having. The new villain in the movie, Kylo Ren, is really good. He's dark and sinister, but he has a little bit of light left in him. There are a couple of scenes where you see him struggling and feeling conflicted between the two sides of the Force. I wish there were more of these, and hopefully there will be more of these scenes in the sequels because they were fantastic. I also hope we get more of Oscar Isaac's character Poe in the sequels. From the first scene you see him in, I fell in love with him and it's really a shame he isn't in the film that much. The effects in this film are all absolutely breathtaking. 99% of the effects in the film were done with practical effects and I was left in complete awe as to how they managed to do a lot of it. There is some CGI in the film though. There are two characters that were created entirely with CGI, and the problem with them is that they really fell out of place. Everything else looked real, so when you get these CGI characters, they stick out like a sore thumb. But everything else in the film looked beautiful. The sets, the real locations, the creature designs, they are all amazing. J.J. Abrams did a fantastic job when it comes down to directing. Sure, if you aren't a fan of his usage of lens flares in his films, you may be a little bit put off, but don't worry, it's not as ridiculously overly used as it was in his Star Trek movies. The film is beautifully shot, and there are many moments where my jaw dropped as to how amazing the scene looked. Whether it was an incredibly impressive camera movement or even simply just a beautiful looking background. The action in the film is incredibly fun and exciting, like seriously more so than any film I think I've seen since the original trilogy. I also liked how similar to the original trilogy, we only have one lightsaber battle in the film. In the prequels we had like 2 or 3 or even more than that a film, but the originals kept it small and only had one fight a film. This made the battles seem much more special, and they used that really well in this film. The lightsaber battle in this film was fucking amazing. It isn't full of loads of jumping and flipping, it's just simply 2 people having a sword fight, and it is really tense and exciting. The film, as well as being really exciting, is full of a lot of humour too. The original trilogy had a funny moment every once in a while, and I honestly think those moments are still funny. The prequel trilogy tried incredibly hard to have funny moments everywhere, but the humour was stiff and incredibly unfunny. But this film completely hits. Everyone in the cinema was laughing all throughout this movie because at times this film could be really funny, especially during the scenes between Han Solo and Chewbacca. Once again, John Williams' score is fantastic in this movie. Although there weren't many new memorable themes in the film, I may find myself remembering them more when I watch the film a few more times. The score mostly is made up of previous themes from the other movies, and they used them perfectly in the right places. Something I found incredibly impressive about this film is how it left me wanting more. After the film had ended, I wanted the next movie to start straight away. After the prequels came out, most people just wanted Star Wars to remain dead. They ruined the franchise. This film brought the franchise back to life gracefully, and now I cannot wait for the next movie. Not even now, after the film ended, I wanted to see it again. Not just the first time I saw it, but also the second time I saw it, I wanted to watch it again straight away. As well as this, it's not just episode 8 I'm really looking forward to, I'm looking forward to all the spin-offs too. Seeing this movie has confirmed that Star Wars, when put into the hands of the fans, can be something absolutely fantastic, because the fans know exactly what the fans want. George Lucas just made what he wanted from his story, whereas the fans will focus more at what they think will work and what they think the fans will enjoy seeing, and J.J. Abrams did that really well with this movie. I don't think there is really much else I can say about this film before I get into spoiling things for people. But seriously, if you're a Star Wars fan, this is an absolute must watch. It is everything you could ever hope for out of a Star Wars sequel. It's better than all 3 of the prequels combined, and it's without a doubt the best Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back. So it gives me so much joy to say that Star Wars The Force Awakens is without a doubt a 10 out of 10. So there we have it. Star Wars, my favourite film franchise ever. Watching these movies again for these reviews really made me realise how much I loved the original trilogy and how much I wasn't huge on the prequels. I'm not going to rank the movies because I've only seen The Force Awakens twice, and I think I need to wait a few years before I can decide where I rank it. Just know the Clone Wars is the worst and The Empire Strikes Back is the best. I was originally going to review the Die Hard movies leading up to Christmas. This was something I planned to do last year but didn't do because my computer broke, and this year I didn't do it because I was incredibly lazy. So I'm sorry for that, but 2016 will be a much more productive year and have more series reviews. In fact, I'm actually halfway through writing a series now, so I'll get them finished soon and make the videos during January. I don't want to say which one I'm doing next because I will end up jinxing myself and never get around to finish writing them, but hopefully it'll be out early to mid-January. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.